you everybody for being here. My name's Terry. I'm a compulsive eater. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day off the gray sheet. I write them down. I call them into my sponsor, and I don't eat no matter what, where, when, or ever, whatever. And I follow the directions that are on the gray sheet and that are given to me from my gray sheet sponsor. And I was many years ago, somebody invited me to the greatest adventure of my life. And when I came into Gray Sheet, now, a year and a half ago or less than a year and a half ago, all of a sudden, the past couple of weeks, I have experienced another great adventure. And I think my higher power said, Terry, you need another adventure. And let's do this one in Gray Sheet, because this is where it's been. And just briefly, I'll tell you a little bit about where I come from. When I was born, I was a fat child, and I grew up in a European household with my grandparents mostly, and everything was all about food. You know, food is love. Food is love. Oh, you hurt? Here, have some food. Oh, you did a good job. Here, have some food. And we always celebrated the birthday of my dead uncle. I don't know if that was something that they did, but I've heard of that before. I would go every year to this uncle who I never met in my life, and we'd have a birthday party for him. And the other thing too is that I never felt like I belonged anywhere, ever. When I was small, even as a little 5-year-old, I was teased by my brother. When I got to school, I was teased unmercifully, and I was teased unmercifully by him also. And I always felt like I didn't belong. I was the last kid on the playground, to be picked for any kind of games that we're playing. And I can remember one day I was probably about 9 or 10. I was in a little bathroom in our house, and I was looking in the mirror, and I was crying my eyes out. And I was looking at myself, and I said, why doesn't anybody love me? What am I doing here? I don't even belong here. I don't think I belong in this family. I must be adopted. I mean, and I equated that with being different, and I carried those messages with me all through my life, all through my life. And one of the things that I share this story because I haven't shared this group before, but one of the things that happened to me when I was about 10, I think. My mother took me to a doctor, and the doctor, it was about 50 miles from our home. And so the doctor examined me, and I had a pair of underpants on and a sheet over my belly and my chest. And he asked her to leave the room. And when she left, he pulled the sheet down. He said, look at you, look at these stretch marks. Look at this, how ugly this is. These are never going to go away. And this is how, this is ugly. And I didn't even know what a stretch mark was. I knew I was ugly because I was different. And I was fat. I didn't fit into anything. I didn't fit anywhere. And so when he told me I was ugly, I really, truly believed him. And eventually what happened was I would not get dressed. I would get dressed only in the dark. I would take a bath only in the dark. I didn't want to look at myself in a mirror. And that went on for a long time. I don't know when I think eventually when that went away was when I was introduced to alcohol. And all I'm going to say to you is I drank for many years, and it worked until it didn't work. And I got into, I actually came into, I guess it was OA. I was 12-stepped into OA from AA. And she came up to me and she said, would you like to go to an OA meeting? And I had put down the beverage and went to the food full time. And by the time she was inviting me to an OA meeting, I weighed over 200 pounds. I'm 5'2.5". I was over about 212 pounds. And it was the only time I ever got on the scale was that time. And I was just shocked that I could have gotten that fat. And so she took me to a table. They had different food plans on there. There was an orange sheet, a blue sheet, and a gray sheet. And I looked them over really quickly, and I picked the gray sheet because it looked like it was the quick fix. This is going to be it. I'm going to follow these food plan. I'm going to get skinny, and I'm going to get out of here. And that was my attitude. And I didn't stay very long. I lost a little bit of weight, but I didn't stay in GreySheet because I was in a hurry. I was in a hurry to get I don't know where. And I spent a lot of years doing the things that I've heard so many times everybody talking about, all the different food plans. There were people that were doing individual food plans, like in a church I went to, and she was stomping around on the stage, giving her pitch, Weight Watchers, and all these different kinds of, food diets and what have you. And nothing ever worked, never, ever worked. And I never stuck with anything either. And so as time went on, I got larger and larger and larger. Even when I was in sixth grade, was about 11 years old in sixth grade, I was given diet pills. They were in like a little matchbox, a little, you get the stick matches and you push the little drawer. They were full of these yellow diet pills. And I was taking them, and I was up all night. I was in those days, I was listening to the radio, would listen to all these different radio shows late at night. I couldn't sleep. I could barely concentrate when I was going to school. And one of the nuns came up to me one day, and my name was Teresa. And she says, "Oh, Teresa, you look like you're losing weight." And it was like, I didn't even care that she said that. It didn't matter because I didn't feel good. I didn't feel good about myself. And anyway, I thought she was lying. and that's how that went on. And then when I got into high school, even before I got into high school, we ordered our clothes through the catalog and the Sears catalog. And I was in seventh and eighth grade, and I was wearing a size 18, these big long skirts, and they fit tight around the waist, but they were too long on me. And I looked like a bag lady. And that's what I wore to school. And then when I got into high school, I had a one skirt that I wore all the time. In my freshman year, all the time. It was a plaid pleated skirt because I figured the pleats are going to cover my fat. And one day I went into the girls' bathroom, and I heard them talking about me. And all I heard was, "And she's wearing that same skirt again, blah, blah, blah." And I walked in like nothing was wrong. I didn't say anything. I just walked in and, washed my hands or whatever. And then I walked back out again. And I pretended like it didn't hurt, but I was embarrassed, and I was ashamed, and I was hurt. And that's the kind of stuff that I put up with. And the other part of that whole side of me was, I learned how early on how to get around a lot of other people by doing what they did to me. I was a bully. I would yell. I would fight. I would argue. I would talk back to my mother. I even slapped my mother's face one time when I was about 15 or 16. She was yelling at me, and I didn't hit her hard, but I crossed the boundary. And I still always remember that, as something that I just did because I wanted her to be quiet. I wanted her to shut up is what I wanted to do. She was just, barking at me. And it's that little letter, that part of my letter of amends to her. She passed away, but I'd written something about, "Mom, I'm sorry I did that. I really regret it." The other thing too is that once I started in GreySheet back in the mid 2000s. I think in 2006 in my big book, there's the mantra. I wrote the mantra. I wrote the phone bridge number. I wrote my sponsor's phone number. I wrote my abstinent date was sometime in December of 2006. I stayed for a while, and I did what I usually do. I got that self-centered boredom that I would get. And I told my sponsor, who I really, really loved, that I was not going to be in GreySheet anymore. And she was disappointed, not in me, but just disappointed, that I wasn't going to hang around. And then I started eating again, over and over again. And in that year that I had been in GreySheet, I went on a nice retreat up in Johnson City, Tennessee. She had helped put all this together. There's still people not near me, but not real far, maybe 100 or so miles away. That I know one woman who she's still in GreySheet. And the other thing that happened was I was never happy. I was always looking for a fix. It didn't matter what it was. I was looking for something to change how I felt. And nothing really worked at all. about
5 minutes, Terry. You have 5 minutes left.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you. About in 2020, August of 2020, I had been off of sugar for a while, and I picked up one round thing, and I couldn't stop eating. And I never, ever, ever connected the dots between that round thing and that inability to not be able to stop eating. I saw it as plain as the nose on my face. And I thought, oh my God, this is, I can't stop. And I, do all the same things I used to do with picking at the food until it was gone. And and my clothes were getting tight again. And I'd get on the scale about 3 or 4 times a day, thinking I was going to lose, an ounce, or it was all going to show up on the scale. And then one day I thought to myself, I'm going to call GreySheet again. I'm going to call GreySheeter. I had her phone number. She had sponsored me at one time, a long, long time ago, and she'd taken me through the steps. And I called her, and she answered. And I said, I want to come back to GreySheet. And she said, well, I'm not sponsoring, but I will get someone to call you. And that woman called me, and that was the beginning of my GreySheet, my journey, the greatest adventure of my life. And I had my misgivings about, especially when she took me off my day count, that I wanted to blame her completely. That this is, how could she do that to me? I had 90 days, and I was getting to be a real smarty. I had got a couple of gigs that was going to qualify and just kill you all with all this wonderful knowledge. And then after that, but I never left. And I didn't get into the food, but I made an independent decision. And I yelled and screamed at her. I called her names. I told her I hated her. And of course, eventually I made an amends, because I knew that I needed to do that. So that's got me back into December. And the things that have happened, I really sashayed through GreySheet for about a year. It was just wonderful. Everything was fine. I was absent. Things were going well. And then a lot of stuff started to happen. And the no matter what days came along, because I'd say to myself, gee, I haven't had any no matter what days. Everything's just great. And then they started. And every no matter what day that I have had, I have learned something. Number one, about how to stay abstinent, what to do if I've got a problem, that there's always a way to stay abstinent, that I don't eat no matter what, that I pick up the phone when I have a question or a problem or a mistake. All these things that I didn't do, that I just, didn't have to do before. Well, I did have to call some mistakes in, but the other stuff too that, that came along. And it's just amazing how even the stuff has come up recently. I mean, it's not, none of it is earth shattering, but it's every one of them is an aggravation, and it's a challenge to what am I going to do to make some phone calls, to get my food called to my sponsor? How am I going to do this? No phone. All I had was texting, and I could email off my phone until my new phone's coming. And so, those are the things. I went away on a weekend one time, and things were falling all over the place in the hotel room. That was several months ago. Last weekend, I went away for a weekend, and I had learned from that last no matter what thing that I did that first weekend I carried my food, and I didn't have those days. I had one little incident that I needed to make a phone call about, that I had missed, committed something that I wanted to clarify with another person. But other than that, I ate my room. I had quiet meals. I had fun where I went. And it was all because of GreySheet and the wonderful, wonderful, compassionate, kind people that you all are, that have helped me through these little rough spots. And the thing that I've learned about the newcomer is reach out to that newcomer. And the woman that drove me this 4-hour trip, this woman that drove me for that 4-hour trip told me about, she said, I'm overeating. I'm not drinking. I'm overeating. I've got an eating problem. And I was able to share my GreySheet, not pushy, but share what tell her I did what I do, tell her what I did and all that. And it was amazing. I left her with the information so she could go online for a phone bridge or a Zoom meeting. And God's in charge. And I was used that day. It was great. I don't eat no matter what. Thank you.